This is a worst case scenario type of event, but I want to help you know how to handle it. Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. I help people live and leave a lasting legacy through infinite banking. Today we're going to discuss chronic illness riders, terminal illness riders, and the like, because in that scenario, it's a worst case type scenario, and I want you to know how to best manage it. So let's talk about these riders in and of themselves, and then also in the context of infinite banking. So as always, be familiar with your contract. You should know what it is, what it says, what it does. And if you're looking at implementing infinite banking, then these riders can be very relevant in the structure of policies that you'll own for the purpose of your need of finance in life. And yet, in the event of a chronic illness or a terminal illness, they can be super valuable. So let's start with chronic illness. So again, generally speaking, when you can have one or both of these riders, there are multiple companies that are going to have slightly varying variations. I did it. I said it. It's no doubt going to cause you to have various responses. Let's roll with it. Every company is going to have their type, their wording. Okay, so be familiar with your company, your contract. But in the event of a chronic illness rider being on your policy, because maybe you qualified for a chronic illness but not a terminal, or actually normally it's typically the other way around. You can qualify for a terminal illness, but maybe not the chronic illness. So all that to say, your rating does play an effect into whether you can qualify for certain riders like chronic illness or the terminal illness or critical illness. So the rating does matter, but when you can have these, and some companies will just automatically add these, if you qualify at whatever rating that you do to own a policy, they will just automatically add one or both or various riders. But the chronic illness rider allows you an accelerated access to capital because of the death benefit if you qualify from a health professional's official results being given. And typically there's an elimination period, meaning that perhaps 90 days or whatever the window is has to go by before you can tap into those resources. So here's a great chance for me to interject some infinite banking or just some holistic financial suggestions. Consider having a robust emergency fund always. Having liquid capital that you can tap into for the very short term in the event of just such a situation. So again, it doesn't matter if you are just starting infinite banking and you're actively paying off debts. I would encourage you to have an emergency fund. That way, if you lose your job or something happens, you're not completely derailed. You have resources to be able to tap into. Now, I personally believe that your long range emergency fund can be built into whole life policies that you own and use for infinite banking, even while doing something aggressive like recapturing debt. But here's a different example. Again, you're diagnosed with a chronic illness, heaven forbid, but if that's the case and you have this 90-day elimination period, being able to tap into an emergency fund for that gap could be super helpful. And there are other details and nuances to consider, which again also leads me to point to you should be having ongoing, regular, and in-depth conversations with your financial professionals. Do that. But the rider allows you to have an accelerated access to the death benefit or a percentage of the death benefit in the event that you're diagnosed with a chronic illness and you have passed that elimination period. And typically, that diagnosis is going to be based on whether or not you can do at least two of those ADLs, the bathing, the transferring, the eating, the toileting, the continence, the transferring, being able to move into or out of a bed or a chair or a wheelchair or such. Or also, if it's the case that you are dealing with some type of severe cognitive issue, such as Alzheimer's. So it could be physical, it could be cognitive. Now, this rider is probably going to only be eligible to be issued to people within a certain range, an age range. And again, it's probably not going to be able to be added onto every rating if you have a standard rating or a substandard rating of some sort. It's a policy that still allows you to do infinite banking, but it may not have this rider on it. There may be a daily or an annual limit on how much this rider can pay out to you from the death benefit. And actually, typically, the benefit is going to be essentially a lien against that total death benefit. Meaning if you use a certain amount every day or per year, that's going to be liened against the total death benefit amount. Which, let me say this here, lots of folks in the infinite banking space will deride having a significant death benefit by only focusing on having a significant cash value in a policy. And I think that's erroneous or disadvantageous, at least for a couple of reasons. One is once you eventually realize that the cash value must equal the death benefit, well, wouldn't you want a big death benefit so that you could have a big cash value eventually? I would say so. But then here also, in this unlikely event, but again, in this unlikely event, the larger the death benefit you have, the longer you can have a payout, or the more robust a payout could be over multiple policies if you have multiple policies from sincerely implementing infinite banking as well. Also, when receiving the benefits, not to get too much in the weeds, but when receiving benefits, those benefits can essentially be, depending on the company, a lien against the death benefit. And the lien against the death benefit may have an interest associated. It could be exactly mimicking whatever the policy loan interest would have been or at that time. So there could be an interest on top of that that would also come from the death benefit. So again, be aware of your contract and the nuances that are in that contract. Be aware of those. I'm even seeing where certain companies will charge a one-time fee of some nominal amount of money when this rider is initiated in the event that you need to. But again, I say that it's such a boon to have a chronic illness rider on top of part of a properly structured policy that you're using for infinite banking. It's a great boon to know that you could tap into those resources while still having had all the benefits of using said policy in your lifetime, both for access to tax-free capital and still creating a legacy for the next generation at the same time. Now let's transition over to the terminal illness rider. Again, this rider is going to allow you to have an accelerated access to a portion of your death benefit in the event that you qualify by having, heaven forbid, a terminal illness. And that typically is going to mean that if you're diagnosed with some illness that probably means you have 12 months or left to live, you can use this rider to have access to benefits. Again, at the time of issue, there may be a range, and it could be 0 to 85, so it could be a big range, but there may be a range of where this cannot be issued. And again, there's probably going to be some formula on what percentage, but it's a significant percentage. We're talking about a significant percentage of the death benefit that can be accessed in an accelerated fashion in the event of a terminal illness. There may also be this lien approach to having access to this benefit and an interest associated with that lien, all of which the death benefit itself, the protection that you've built up, is covering for you. And again, this terminal illness particularly is very often automatically included in all the approved states throughout the United States on the qualifying policies, meaning policies that this rider can be added on. It typically is automatically going to happen. So I hope that was helpful. Suffice it to say, having something like a chronic illness rider or a terminal illness rider or something of that type in the event of those drastic, dramatic, unlikely events is a great boon to the person who is out here trying to live and leave a lasting legacy. It provides a great measure of peace, of provision for those events, and our intended purposes, of course, and implementing infinite banking all along the way. If this video has been helpful to you, please give me a big thumbs up and enjoy the next video. You can find me at durhamtalents.com. Live and leave a lasting legacy.